an anti-interesting event.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hello, welcome to the Intellectual Christmas Tree. We do the show once a year if Christmas falls on a Wednesday. It's a viewer-supported programming, obviously, so I don't know. Go to echoplexmedia.com, click the support tab or the support link, and you can find ways to support the show. And if you're watching live on Twitch, you already know how Twitch monetization works. I'm producer Dave, and you can find me on Grindr. Fucking Merry Christmas, everybody, I guess. It's Eric Weinstein on Triggernometry, because of course it is.
What's really exciting to me is we don't know if this is going to be a disaster or whether this is going to be a new golden age. He's really the most anomalous politician we've ever had, and I think that a lot of the discomfort comes from
cringe ass video. That's right.
One box or another, it just won't fit.
So what's your concern?
This is really dangerous stuff. What he's about to do, in my opinion, is renegotiate the world. We needed to shake this up for sure, but this is going up to 11. The Cold War is forever. I don't think that the level of imagination needed to imagine nukes is very high anymore.
Eric Weinstein.
We don't have to imagine nukes.
Good to be with you guys.
It's good.
America's used them on people.
Listen, the election is over. It's happened. Trump is the president. He's got a clear mandate to govern. You were somebody who took a lot of flack in the run-up to the election from people who felt that you were, I don't know, fence-sitting or whatever the term might be.
We're not going to start there. That's ridiculous. We can get to that. What we should be talking about, first of all, is that this is a stunning result.
It is.
And it's because that just allows the trolls to determine the narrative.
But they said that you were critical. Now, I don't like non-Oliver and Constantine, but they didn't say that.
Probably since Ronald Reagan.
They didn't say that he was.
And I think this is a dramatic
trolling.
moment. And I guess I'm mostly thinking about all the things that can happen now as a guy who was trying to do all sorts of policy adjustments from like the 1980s through about, I don't know.
How did everybody see how on Twitter he was like hell of begging the fucking new administration to like have a meeting with him, and none of them responded to him?
Obama term. And so what's really exciting to me is we don't know if this is going to be a disaster or whether this is going to be a new golden age. It's got
This is what I was going to ask you, because, and it's somewhat a confession for me, like what I was going to ask you really is, are you unhappy with the result?
I don't think it's the right question. I mean, I think that the idea is that this is a pretty desperate situation and it could go horribly wrong or amazingly right. And I think the wide
or anything in between.
Confusing people.
Okay, that's very interesting. So a lot of people just feel like finally we just had Rob Schneider on and his
they just had Douche Bigelow on. I never didn't know that they had Douche Bigelow on.
So far to the left, they left the country behind. So a lot of people feel, well, that's kind of
finally they had a guest less funny than they are.
That slide, right? And therefore a lot of people are happy, even people who were in the middle like us. But these
people are not in the middle. These people are reactionaries.
I'm very concerned.
Why?
Because you're basically breaking a lot of structure. That's what I think is about to happen, and that could go horribly wrong. But a lot of that structure was really diseased, and so as a result, you have a load.
By diseased, he means did not give Eric the respect he wants.
Plan to knock out load-bearing walls. You don't know whether they're capable of doing it, and the whole apartment building is going to come down.
No, those walls are load-bearing. You shouldn't knock them over.
We're going to get a solid foundation. So I think people just aren't understanding that this is not the continuation. This is, first of all, not the first Trump administration, where I knew the error he was going to make. He thought he was going to be governing. And you can't govern in Washington unless you have a giant team. And there are only 2 giant teams. And Trumpism didn't exist. So it wasn't like Trump could hire a bunch of Trumpists because Trump just made stuff up that was totally idiosyncratic of the moment. And he's the only person who can do Trump, right? It's just this completely erratic, drunken boxing routine. Elon is another version of this. He just constantly comes up with new weird things. And you never know what he's going to do next. So that's a terrible...
But for both of them, we know what they're going to do next. They're going to fucking do whatever helps them and hurts people that they think have slighted them.
If you have to hire 10,000 people to run a town that runs the country that, influences the world. I think this time around, he knows that. But, Trump was the only president, according to my research, who's never held government or military office previous to getting into the Oval. So he's really the most anomalous politician we've ever had. And I think that a lot of...
I don't think somebody in chat asked, I don't think he still works for Peter Thiel's firm. Not as far as I know. And so people know, if you're thinking Peter Thiel's venture firm, Thiel Capital is not the big one. His big one is called Founders Fund. Thiel Capital is more like his ego project.
Trying to put him in one box or another. He just won't fit.
So what's the load-bearing wall? Or what are the load-bearing walls?
Well, first of all, I think it's the international agreements, NATO, NAFTA, trade rounds, and anything that basically requires huge coordination with other countries is a problem in a democracy, because the democracy.
Wait, why?
Revisit these things every 4 years, and so, in essence, we have a permanent foreign policy establishment that plays keep-away ball with the American public to try to make sure that you always get 2 candidates who are going to continue the agreements so that our allies don't think that we're wobbly, and our foes know that we mean business, and it's not going to be put at risk every 4 years with a populist. And Donald Trump was particularly hated in 2016 for different reasons. The reason Washington freaked out about him, in my opinion, was that nobody knew whether he was going to continue the agreements.
Do you
it's a good thing for your country to honor its agreements with other countries, right? That's a good thing. That's what stable, functioning nations do. Even if the political winds change in the nation, you still honor your agreements that you made with other countries. Otherwise, nobody's ever going to fucking make an agreement with you again.
The election of Trump is in many ways a sign that America is in crisis, that the ordinary party, the ordinary ways of doing things simply don't work. So we need to go to Trump almost as a last-ditch resort.
It's a good question. I don't know how to answer it exactly. Clearly, if you go out into the street, even in a place like Los Angeles, you'll always hear people say, California has fallen. Los Angeles is history. It's still mostly Los Angeles. The crisis in general isn't at that level. Now, we've had riots, of course, with George Floyd. But the bigger issue is just that we have...
These people will never stop talking about the uprising of 2020.
series of agreements that came off of World War II. And I would say that in a certain sense, the last time the United States of America absolutely existed in the sense that we think of it might have been around World War II. We have a decaying function where we had a lot of coherence.
But that's because all our fucking potential adversaries had been bombed into oblivion, and they actually fought World War II, like with, as they say, blood and treasure.
The military, the regular government, the branches of government, but also pivotal, industry sectors, or let's say communications, where America worked as one towards a common goal. So we've been.
But that wasn't happening
for a very long time, but we had a spectacular win in 1945. That thing is coming to.
We took credit for what the Soviets did.
Considered to be normal life is nothing of the kind. The period between 1945 and the present is the most anomalous thing that will never occur again, and it's over.
Why is it the most anomalous thing that will never occur again?
In part because of thermonuclear weapons, which was November of 1952 with Ivy Mike in the Pacific. That was a big deal. And because of the size of Damocles' sword, it confuses the Steven Pinker types into thinking, wow, this is just a marvelously peaceful era. But everything is potential destruction. So everybody was very well behaved. Now,
you know what Steven Pinker wasn't confused about? Jeff Epstein. And still kept hanging out with him.
Or maybe it was 1963, we had the Test Ban Treaty. And so people haven't been exploding these fantastic weapons in ways that people can see and feel them for a very long time. And as a result, we don't really, for a while, we didn't think that nuclear weapons were a part of our world. We thought that was banished in the early 1990s with the demise of the Cold War.
So what's changed? You're saying it's over, but I don't see people using nuclear weapons.
I don't.
But Eric wants the U.S. to use one.
Needed to imagine nukes is very high anymore. For some reason, the American mind got quite stupid when we declared victory in a peace dividend, and Bill Clinton said a lot of things that weren't true. The Cold War is forever. There is no end of the Cold War. And it may become a multipolar Cold War. It might be a safer Cold War. But if you look at,
if you define Cold War as like conflict, where people don't end up blowing each other up, then yeah, I guess there's always going to be a Cold War, because nations will always have conflict that hopefully doesn't spill over into like kinetic conflict. So if you're using that definition of Cold War, then I'm in a Cold War with anybody I don't agree with.
The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, the Doomsday Clock, the last time I looked, it was the closest to midnight it had ever been at 90 seconds. You have a multipolar situation with Tehran and Moscow and Kiev and Jerusalem, and potentially the Taiwan Strait, India and Pakistan could go. You have one giant policeman with a relatively small number of carrier groups. You have.
I'm sorry, with a relatively. He's talking about us with a relatively small number of carrier groups. Carrier groups. That's like groups of aircraft carriers. I think, and I could be wrong, I think the last time that I looked into this, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think I think the United States has more aircraft carriers than everyone else combined.
Really been tested. I think a lot could happen. I think you have a lot of unskilled players, and very dangerous skilled players are probably safer than nicer unskilled players.
And what is the dynamic with Trump? Because you say it puts certain big international things at risk, but is he really going to pull America out of NATO? It seemed to me like he was just using that threat to get the Europeans to pay for themselves, right?
Well, that's just the thing. His variance, it's the same point again. His variance is high. He knows that it's two different styles, let's put it that way. Trump's style in business is to become uncertain. Mm-hmm. You don't know what he's going to do. Very few people, like our mutual friend Sam Harris, thinks he's an idiot. Clearly he isn't. He's got multiple.
Sam Harris, I don't think he's your friend anymore.
Playing certain games. If you study him,
I don't think he's friends with them either. I don't like Sam Harris. I just don't think y'all are homies.
Permutations of the tricks he knows, but it's a large combinatorial set of possibilities when he communicates, and he's still very effective in trapping people. That thing that he did with the Liz Cheney the issue about, he slips in that hand her a rifle because he's trying to get at the chicken hawk issue, but he knows that the news media will mishear it. And that way they will jump on him, and then he will be in a position to play the next move where he corrects them and shows that they're completely non-trustworthy. So I think in part in negotiations, you don't know what he's going to do next. In governance, you don't know what he's going to do next. He's very creative, very unpredictable. He's the most interesting politician of our time.
So that then comes back to ultimately in that situation, if you think that someone's predictable, I guess most people would seek to judge what that person's likely to do based on their perception of that person's skill set, intention, and character, right? Do you trust this guy to have America's interests at heart? That will be the way to assess it, right?
I trust that he has America's interests at heart. I don't.
Why? I depend. I mean, this is all stupid too, because it depends. What do you think America's interests are? Because if you ask me and you ask Eric, what the interests of our society, maybe not the nation state, but of our society are, I'd probably think that he and I would come up with a very different set of things that are in the interest of our society.
I, who supposedly has Trump derangement syndrome, I don't think I have the usual variant.
I don't think anyone's ever accused. Have people accused you of having Trump derangement
syndrome? Well, the problem is that everything is quantized now, so we try to snap everyone to grid. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you love him or do you hate him?
Like a DJ.
The point is, I very clearly appreciate
Eric would be a horrible DJ.
And I don't,
train wreck
I would not
Eric.
trifle with that man. That is a very skilled, very unusual life form. And that, the question in my mind isn't, does he love America? I think he really cares about legacy and greatness.
I don't care if somebody
really loves his children.
makes the motions that they
really
like.
have
Is
to
this
go
person
by.
like going to make good decisions when it comes time to make a decision? This crap about like, oh, do you love America enough? That's stupid. What if you're kind of ambivalent about America, but you understand what your job is, and then you do your job correctly?
Is that those children are really devoted to their father, and that tells me a lot. I believe that he really loves America. He's never been given his due.
So what's your concern?
That this is really dangerous stuff. What he's about to do, in my opinion,
is
renegotiate the world.
He's going to try.
One of the things that he excels at is, if you have a tradition, he's not excited to be the nth person to carry the tradition on. He's very excited to be the first person to break it. Like moving the embassy in Jerusalem.
But that was what the establishment wanted.
Throwing out the first pitch was an easier one to do. I think he's going to do all sorts of stuff that hasn't been done before, particularly with the game theory that he's not seeking re-election, and he knows what happened, like the last time around. And his the bench in the Democratic Party is so weak. These people have not been able to.
But that's what everybody said before Barack Obama.
New recruits of high talent, because there's no room to move in that party.
I think it's a really good analysis of what you've said, because I think Trump is a natural disruptor. He's a natural disruptor. That's what he does. That's essentially what populism is. But cometh a man, cometh a moment. Don't we need a natural disruptor now? Because the natural order of things no longer works. That's what we talk about all the time.
Did you mean to reverse the order of that? It's usually cometh the hour, cometh the man.
Yeah, sorry.
No, because it was interesting to think about it the other way.
Yeah, and that's what he's been put.
Eric was like, I know the exact saying, but also I'm going to pretend that I think you're smart because you said it the other way.
It's to disrupt. It's to challenge. The status quo isn't working. We all acknowledge that. So actually, what we need is someone like him, and we have no other choice. So we need to roll the dice and just see what happens.
Well, but you're rolling the dice squared. Elon, for example, is the other person I would associate with. I mean, I guess my view of Elon, I've really never met him. I've started minor correspondence with him.
That means you tweeted at him and he didn't respond. Poor Eric. Even apartheid Clyde doesn't want anything to do with him.
I view Elon as being like the only adult on planet Earth at the moment. And he's a completely chaotic, like your friend's crazy dad, but definitely dad. So I think Elon has the long-term view of humanity. He's absolutely brilliant. He's totally chaotic. And it's basically Trump times Elon equals lit. It's going to be lit.
It's going to be like, God, I fucking can't stand Eric using things.
What's going on in the Middle
things
East?
like lit.
Isn't chaos a good thing? Isn't chaos where they can't predict which way they're going to go? Iran can't predict which way America is going to go. Isn't that good if we look at it as a term of these people are our enemies? We have pandered to them for too long. We need chaos. We need disruption, and we need to put them on the back foot.
Pretty bold, Francis. Too rich for my blood. I'm out. I don't know what to say. Okay, the problem is this thing I've talked about before. Maybe with you guys can't remember. Message violence. Message violence is incredibly important, and the way most people learn about message violence is from The Godfather, where the vest is put on the table and then there's a fish in it and nobody knows what it means. Somebody says, oh, it's an old Sicilian message. Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. Iran just practiced message violence, and it did it in Gaza, coming across the border. It did it with Hezbollah. It did it with the Houthis in Yemen.
What?
And most importantly, it did it with hypersonic ballistic missiles, killing almost no one in Israel. And what was the point of that? It was to say, you have no Iron Dome. And Tel Aviv has no Islamic holy sites. It's got really good hummus and falafel in Jaffa, but
what?
There is no... What percentage of the Earth's Jewish people live in Greater Tel Aviv, completely unprotected from a ballistic barrage sent with love from Tehran? I don't know.
Very few.
It's not small. You're talking about... You ever been to war? I haven't.
No.
Okay. Even our military in the U.S. mostly hasn't been to war. It's been to all sorts of operations. It's been to, conflicts. War is serious stuff. And most of us who are, the world is in the middle of a masculinity crisis. People are talking tough because they're trying to remember.
The world, it's some MRA shit. The world's in the middle of a masculinity crisis. Like, does he think that like more people should have suffered the horrors of war so that we could be more masculine? Like, it's like hard to pin down what he's saying sometimes, because I think he does it on purpose, but I think he's been doing it on purpose for so long that he kind of isn't doing it on purpose anymore.
Male. But I just think we've forgotten about how dire the consequences of a miscalculation. And when you have so many people who have not learned how to speak violence, like one of the things in message violence is you make the killing that you do so completely, picturesque, disgusting, horrible, like what ISIS would do with those videos with the 4K production values and all that. That is intended.
So you mean a modern
small
phone?
Amount of violence goes the longest distance. And so we don't really think about this stuff very accurately because we don't speak this as our native language. And I just worry that we can say all these things and we have no idea what we're actually viscerally buying when we say, yeah, we got to shake things up.
Yeah. And look, because there is an element of risk, but I think we can all agree that the way that the Democrats handled Afghanistan, the Middle East, wasn't working.
I'm with you.
So there needs...
What do you mean the way that the Democrats handled that? What is he talking about?
You have me there too. My point is that there was a lot of room between the bizarre behavior of the Democrats and business as usual and this wild improv troupe loaded with talent, but that doesn't have a traditional power base. There's a lot of skill in Washington, D.C., and I think this is something that we don't talk enough about. Washington, D.C. is largely filled with geeks. People who, if you're in the FDA, you really know your nutrition stuff. And, if you're...
Oh, you should talk to your brother about it. Your brother would disagree.
Department of Energy, you've got to know about nuclear weapons and blast radii and all this kind of stuff. People... Very often, the permanent class in Washington, D.C. is just incredibly skilled and very geeky. And I worry that this new team I don't know who's coming. I have no idea if they know how to staff this thing and how the political appointees are going to work with the permanent class. So it's exciting. I mean,
so they've sort of vowed to essentially have a loyalty test for what he calls the permanent class. Other people would call it the deep state, I suppose.
we see from my demeanor. It's super exciting. It's also terrifying. We needed to shake this up for sure, but this is going up to 11.
So, just sticking with Iran, we've had a lot of people on the show recently who feel that given that the source of the threat to Israel is Iran, inevitably that clash is going to manifest itself in some way. Now,
Why?
Because if Israel's their argument would be if Israel's purpose is to eliminate the threat to Israel, given that that threat is emanating from Iran, it would mean the necessity of having to degrade their nuclear facilities, destroy their oil revenues. Their argument is you can destroy Hamas and Hezbollah as long as you want, but ultimately that's not where the threat is coming from.
Going online with our ExpressVPN.
No.
More doing
They don't speak. Why?
6 months of ExpressVPN for free.
Ooh.
This is why I worry about podcasts. Let me.
Do you remember when he had a podcast and then he quit his podcast because he wanted to sue people for making fun of him?
Don't speak Farsi. My Hebrew is in terrible disrepair, and I don't speak Arabic. In order to say such things, you really should know something about the region. And I worry that what you have is a lot of us jawing off as if we know what we're talking about when we don't.
Eric, a little bit of self-awareness every once in a while is a good thing. Good for you.
I would like to think that we know enough to realize that the population of Iran is not necessarily on the side of the mullahs. And you only have this issue that eventually Israel and Iran will come to some massive conflagration.
Yeah, but also like the population of Israel is not so happy with the Likud party right now either. It's the it's the way of the world when you have a nation state with millions of people. A non-insignificant portion of those people aren't going to like what the nation state is doing. It's the same in every country.
If you don't believe that regime change inside of Iran is possible, I personally think, and this could be completely wrong, that Tehran is home to very modern, very progressive people who are living under tyranny, that there isn't a profound hatred of all things Jewish or Israeli. And I just seriously think that we need to make sure that the people making the decisions don't have a simplified picture of what is or is not inevitable. Back in the days of Shimon Peres, he was always upset that the Palestinian Arabs were occupying the Israeli mind. And he was saying, look, we have a potential nuclear theocracy. Nobody knows what a potential nuclear theocracy is. It's a very strange game theoretic structure, particularly if you have a culture of death and paradise. So, my feeling about this is it would be better if we had people who were true experts in the region making these pronouncements. I worry that there's a lot.
But like who?
Because
he's going to say, like he will, on the other hand, would say that the people, like the diplomats and all the people in academia that are studying this and whatnot, like everybody who does this professionally, he would probably say they're captured, they're bad people, they have bad intent, and mostly they don't listen to Eric. So I just wonder, like, who does that leave? Who is he talking about?
because it's fun, and I worry that there are a lot of men with masculinity issues who like talking about this stuff in ways that could be very, very dangerous.
Well, and not men.
Who are the men with masculinity issues?
Well, that's why I was putting an argument to you. I certainly wouldn't give any super credibility to it. But the logical conclusion of what's been happening so far is that, which is why I think a Trump presidency has the potential to change things, because I don't think we want things to go in that direction.
I don't know. I mean, this is a lot of, it's very weird. Everybody knows stuff, you know? People said, well, is it going to be Biden or Trump? I said, I didn't know whether Biden would make it to November. And then they said, this is going to be a nail biter. And I would say, how do you know that? Doesn't seem like a nail biter. I worry that there's this epidemic.
But what do you mean? How do you know that? Like, he could say that. What if Kamala won? He could have said, "Well, it didn't seem like a nail biter to me." Like, he's not even saying like that because he didn't predict anything. He's like saying, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is going to happen." All right, dude. Well, that's good. Except that you you sort of leverage the fact that you may have once said that to cover up for the fact that you constantly make these proclamations that are crazy.
The internet brings out in us, and that more or less I keep saying, I don't know. And I still think I'm outperforming almost everybody in terms of.
But I don't know is always the right answer. So yeah, you're going to outperform everybody, but you don't always say you don't know.
These predictions. And I don't know what to do about that because I'm not very, very confident of this stuff myself. And I've just seen this wall of very certain people, the same people who tell me that Putin will never use nuclear weapons because he has so much to lose, are the same people who told me that Putin will never invade Ukraine. It's exactly the same people.
Do they have names, Eric? Do any of these people have names?
It's a profound point, and it's a position that comes.
No, that's not a profound point.
And actually, it's brave to say I don't know, because now we live in a world where everybody's on a team, everybody has a particular worldview. And what worldviews give you is certainty. Because
no, a worldview doesn't necessarily. You can see the world a certain way and still be uncertain, still be very uncertain what's about to fucking happen.
Are you? You weren't on a team the last time I talked.
No, we're not on a team.
Yeah.
But it's saying most people.
No,
We're better than most people.
Yeah. Pure, virtuous.
So this is so stupid because they are very ideologically driven. Constantine got real mad at Chris Kavanaugh from Decoding the Gurus when they spoke because he kept telling him, he's like, listen, he's like, it's pretty clear what your ideology is based on who you talk to, how often you talk to them, and how you treat different people, and how tough the questions are you ask of certain people that you have on your show. He's like, it's pretty clear where you're coming from.
Just better.
Okay, be that as it may. Yeah, I don't know what to do about this. I always try to tell people that the objectivists in Ayn Rand were collectivists because they had a team and a name.
Wait, what?
To me, the thing I'm most interested in is.
But you're a collectivist then because you coined the term intellectual dark web and then fucking ran basically an ego grift on it ever since. So you're doing the same thing that you're saying that the other people are doing.
How radical individualism, and I mean profoundly radical individualism, to thrive. And my concern is that the teams are taking up all the oxygen. Wokistan versus Magistan. Okay, most of us aren't really either.
I'm pretty woke.
For all the talk about blue-haired people, mostly I don't see people with blue hair. And I don't think I've ever seen a MAGA hat, despite having been in Florida and Texas over 8 years. I don't think I've ever seen somebody wearing a MAGA hat just in the street. So
that's because you go to like gated communities.
Flawed impression of who we are because our online selves aren't even really tied to our real selves.
And as we've discussed with many people, there is a lot of bots and there's a lot of foreign influence and all sorts of things going on there.
Completely.
Which are amplifying, in my opinion, quite deliberately, the divisions that may or may not exist. And actually, if you look at policy-wise, I don't think, your interview will probably go out before the interview with Batya. But when we had Batya on, she made this point very well, that most people agree on like 80% of the policies. But, the one thing I've really taken away from this trip to America, we come here regularly, is I used to think that the media embellish and exaggerate and, they're sort of like a little bit directionally accurate, but they exaggerate. And
what do you mean by the media?
That's adorable.
The media is like any media. That's anything.
Thank you. Thank you for that patronizing and condescending.
But I've been around for too long.
However, you see, I also think that actually the vast majority of people, especially outside America, but actually many people inside America also think like that.
Okay.
That's been my experience, right? I saw this in New York Times, therefore, it is, he's not Hitler, but he's kind of like, 20% towards Hitler type of thing. And this trip, having, we went to a Trump rally to see it with our own eyes, and we blah, 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 blah.
You get the hat?
No.
But we did see Hulk Hogan do a speech, so.
Yeah. And what I took away from it now is they're not embellishing and exaggerating, they're just lying. So it's not just bots on social media and people on Twitter.
So what he means to say is the people who don't share my view are lying, which we all think that sometimes. It's not interesting.
Space that is completely distorted.
They're maxing out. This is an old structure in its dying throes.
Right.
And so, as the old advertisement goes, what are you saving the shivas for? There's a point where you liquidate whatever you have left because you're losing. The lying isn't working as well. In particular, I think Elon used Trump getting shot and the actual bravery to say, perfect moment to jump out of the Democratic Party because at least we know that was effective.
that moment was when Elon stopped being a liberal.
Right? And then the idea is that you have these preference cascades, and Timur Kuran's theory of how you foment a revolution is that you get brave people like Elon.
Brave people like Elon?
And then
that guy's a fucking coward. He's like afraid of his trans daughter. I mean, she seems like a badass, but still.
A slow clap of the next person, and does the slow claps spread? And I think that partially what you're seeing is a giant exodus from the Democratic Party and the mind control of mainstream media. Now,
Are you seeing that? And what does he mean? Does he mainstream media is Joe Rogan now?
In large measure, the gated institutional narrative is traded between institutions. If nobody was watching CNN, Pfizer would still need it in order to talk to its regulators, and in a certain sense, more and more people don't believe it. You do have to keep track of it because it's a set of instructions as to what you're allowed to believe while at work, or what you're allowed to believe if you...
No. You're allowed to believe anything you want wherever the fuck you are at. It's just whether or not you decide to open your mouth, and you just kind of take a look at the situation around you and make that decision.
And go to meetings, and you're in that class. So it's very important that you receive your instructions on an almost daily basis as to how to coordinate your points of view. And I always give this example of Tahrir Square when Mubarak was overthrown and the New York Times was not using the word revolution. People are saying, the demonstrations seem to have resulted in Mubarak's departure. I said, you mean the revolution? They're like, no, it wasn't a revolution. I said, what are you talking about? Well, I wasn't hooked up. I was using Arabic accounts that tweeted half in English. And so they were using the word revolution, but we weren't using the word revolution. So it's amazing.
So you were taking the word of like activists about something?
Also the case that our minds are divided. You have a part of your brain that knows that the New York Times is more or less lying. And you have another part that agrees to believe it.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, that's just cognitive
that
dissonance.
part
We
of
all
the brain
suffer
that
with it to
agrees
some
to
extent.
believe it. It's so powerful. And I find myself, even now, when I see a New York Times headline or I see a mainstream media headline, I immediately go, oh, that's what's actually happened, before I actually have to check myself.
I believe both in different parts of my brain. It's like I used to talk about having a jihadi sandbox in my mind so that I could understand how jihadis think.
What?
So, you have a place in your brain. Do you do accents ever when you were a kid?
Yeah, I still do them now.
Okay. We frown on this officially. The part of your brain that suddenly knows how to talk Cockney or, with a Gujarati accent or whatever.
No, that's just you. You're kidding. Like most people, when they do accents, are just kidding.
Is a different module. And we have a bunch of different modules. And I just find it funny that we still talk, well, do you believe this? Do you not believe this? Very often, I believe something intellectually that I don't believe viscerally.
But reality is still reality. There still is a reality, which is why if you make trades based on a false narrative, reality will slap you in the face, right? So,
But well,
the whole
but then your reality, it's different. Observing reality and predicting the future are two different things. If you're not able to observe reality well, you'll probably be a little less likely to predict the future. But what thing are you trying to predict? And how much does it have to do with what happened today and what happened yesterday?
in this moment really is about whether the left and the Democrat Party is going to face reality, which is that the way they talk and the things they say and the way they operate are not popular with Americans.
But we don't know that because like half of people vote. Like less than half of the people are voting.
Can continue to imbibe a narrative that isn't accurate and that does not reflect the reality of what their fellow citizens think. Isn't that the issue here?
I think that you're talking about something that's hopefully about to happen, which is that a certain kind of base reality is too difficult to deny.
Well, if you keep losing elections, it's too difficult to deny, right?
Well, they've lost one just now, but this is going to be a very consequential one. First of all, it puts J.D. Vance, who I consider a friend, on deck. Man, is that guy smart.
No, he's not.
Finds all sorts of aspects of progressivism. I think he ran a campaign with Donald Trump as a loyal number two. But
I mean, I think he's a number two as well, but I think we're talking about different things.
I think he could run a campaign that would just be irresistible to all sorts of people. So I would like to just point out that you could easily have 12 years coming off of this election, and you could have a Supreme Court that was completely dominated by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, and it will transform the country. So this is a very consequential election to have screwed up. It's not just that they lost an election. It's also the end of something. Because, Obama, doesn't matter what you think of him and whether he was a disappointment to you in office, that was real star power. And you watched him degrade himself as he threw his support behind Kamala Harris.
Wait, what? Degrade himself?
Highly degraded.
I would love to get Eric to get into more of why he thought it was degrading for the former Democratic president to throw his support behind the current Democratic nominee for president.
Gavin Newsom could not keep a straight face with the switch when Kamala was put forward. He said, "Oh yes, it was a top-down inclusive affair." Ha 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 ha. This was such a bad story.
No, the whole thing was bad. I mean, he's right, but he's right for the wrong reasons. Like the Democratic Party, like it was a fucking shit show. Like it was a fucking shit show. They like first thing they did that was dumb was fucking like it worked in it didn't backfire in 2020. First thing they did that was dumb. That was like, oh, we should just see if Republicans will vote for us. Well, no, they're Republicans. They vote for Republicans. And then they continued to, Joe Biden had a pretty progressive record as a president, but like rhetorically, the party continued to punch the fucking hippie. And it's like, but those are the people that are going to vote for you.
I also think that, Kamala Harris's apparent drop in IQ is...
I'm sorry? What?
Due to the fact that nobody can explain the Democratic Party. It's a series of horse trades and intellectual half measures. And
that's called politics. Politics, unfortunately, is a series of horse trades and intellectual half measures. I might just call it, the horse trade, they just call it retail politics. You got to sometimes give something to get something. And then intellectual half measures, we refer to that as compromise.
Nobody knows how to, it doesn't have any coherence. Are you the party of sweetness and light? Are you the party of the working class, or are you really the party of the transgendered and financial billionaires worried about the carried interest exemption?
Wait, what?
It just didn't make any sense, and there was no way to defend it, and still got close to 50% of the popular vote because so many people are dependent on these narratives.
No, because so many people looked at the options and decided to vote for the Democrats.
To me, the Democrat Party, and we're talking about reality, they're so divorced from reality in so many.
When they talk about this, they
ways.
just mean that the Democratic Party doesn't hate trans people. That's all they mean when they talk about this. This is all fucking dog whistles.
They talk about being democratic, but Kamala Harris didn't go through any primary. They just appointed her.
This is a great point, because I think people didn't really update as to what happened after that point got made. So I started talking to my academic friends. I said, you can't say democracy is on the ballot if there's no primary. And immediately all of my like poli-sci aware academic friends said things like, oh, no. A political party is free to choose whoever it wants.
Yeah, it is.
And democracy is, we've only really had these primaries since the 68 convention in Chicago of the Democratic Party. And the real thing is called the invisible primary, and everybody in the Beltway knows this whole thing. You're saying, oh, cool. So you just pulled the mask off and says, democracy is a binary choice between two parties that have given you every single president since Millard Fillmore. And that's democracy. Nobody's going to send their son with a rifle to fight for this vision of democracy. The thing
Yet people still join the military.
Us to put our right hand over our heart is the idea of a government by, of, and for the people not perishing from this earth. The idea of, this concept of perfectly legal. Something is legal means that you're allowed to do it. Something's perfectly legal means somehow there's a loophole in the law and you can't get tagged for it, even though it's completely wrong.
Then it's just legal.
Perfectly legal, perfectly permissible to just select a candidate. And it was an abomination.
But no, he's leaving out the part where there was a primary and then the person who won the primary dropped out of the fucking general election. There was a primary. It was just a dog and pony show, but that's because when was the last time that any political party who had an incumbent president who wanted to run for re-election had a presidential primary that was anything but a dog and pony show? Not even a dog and, there was no dog and no pony show. They just told you there might be one. That's what they always do. That's what happens when you're the incumbent president and you decide to run again for a second term. That's been the way it always has been. Is that good? Probably not. But is this new or unique to the Democratic Party? Absolutely not.
Fun, because the same people had this tagline, democracy is on the ballot. Like those t-shirts were already printed figuratively. And so, yes, you've installed a candidate who was the worst candidate available until she became America's sweetheart.
Wait, what?
Whiplash from that period of time.
She was the vice president.
Forced the machinery to reveal itself.
And it seems like that's one of the logical fallacies within the Democrat Party. But it's just one
But that's not a logical fallacy.
after another. And look, I know nobody's fully coherent, no political party, blah, blah, blah. There are always inconsistencies. But you look at they talk about being the party of minorities. Yet when black men don't go out to vote for them, they admonish them as a group and go, well, how dare you?
Well, no, that's people on Twitter. That's not the Democratic Party. The apparatus of the Democratic Party wasn't run around after the election saying that it was black men's fault. Black men still voted for Kamala more than they voted for Donald Trump. So I don't know what the fuck is this guy talking about?
All you black men, why haven't you done this? And you're going, is that anti-racist?
You know what we're doing? We're doing therapy. We've been through like a North Korean brainwashing experiment. And we can't believe that this happened. It's so bad. And every single person of any kind of originality of thought or independence of mind rejects it. Now, why did this ever work? I learned in part a lot about the U.S. from having a podcast. And
wait, what? No, you didn't.
it was very popular with people.
If you were learning so much, why did you shut it down? Because Sam Cedar, he shut it down because Sam Cedar was making too much fun of him. He was on Twitter. He wasn't saying it, but he was like, I need a lawyer who is fluent in internet culture and defamation law. And it was pretty clear he was talking about the fact that the Majority Report and the people that follow the Majority Report and the people in the Majority Report's orbit who are content creators, who I will, in a very, very, very self-aggrandizing way, maybe call myself, that these people were going after him and making fun of him, and he had to block all of these people who were making fun of him. I think he really, really got mad when Billy Bragg went after him. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Billy Bragg was like, "Have me on your show," and he said to Billy Bragg, "Oh, I will share my show with a stage with you if you share a stage with me." And he meant, "Have me come play guitar at a Billy Bragg concert."
Well, I didn't expect. Truck drivers who really care about physics. Electricians who care about the Middle East. There are all sorts of people who solve puzzles every day, general contractors. And these people are in a creative field because every day is different. You never know what house you're going to show up or what trucking route or who knows what. And they've got time on their hands and they're not beholden. Nobody cares whether your electrician is MAGA or woke. As long as they get the job done and they leave your house in decent order and they don't charge you too much.
I would argue, Eric, that it's impossible to be a bricklayer and be woke, because to be woke is to be disconnected from reality.
See, this is dumb. My opponents could not possibly be good at such and such a trade. Or Eric might say that, maybe Eric would say that it's impossible to be a physicist and be woke or whatever. And but this would be like saying that it's impossible to be a good biologist and be a Christian, right? We all know that there are great biologists out there who are Christian and maybe even believe that God created the universe or whatever. But that doesn't affect their work.
And to be a bricklayer is to be very much grounded in reality.
I agree. And so in general, most of the point I was trying to make.
Sorry, Eric.
That's all right. It was very forceful and commanding. I kind of enjoyed it. The way I saw it is that these people, by and large, were America's secret brain trust. Mm-hmm. And they're not having it because there's no reason. Now, if you
that's great that the secret brain trust came, because Eric tried to be the brain trust and certainly isn't trying to make it a secret. He wants you to know that he's the brain trust. Nobody listens to him, so good for the fucking bricklayers and electricians, I suppose. I'll take them over people like Eric any day.
And you compare that to the very highly educated. One of the arguments that the Democratic Party likes to make is, all the people with master's degrees and PhDs and JDs and MDs vote for us. And the answer is because you're an interest structure. And
well, I don't know why they all vote for the Democrats.
If you're in a woke workplace, particularly large institutions that have to, I forget, what is it, above 15 employees, you have to follow the civil rights, legislation about inclusion, all this kind of stuff. Those workplaces are constantly demanding fealty to this woke parchment.
Does he mean this, like the Civil Rights Act? Does he mean like things like Title IX? I mean, if we're going to do that, let's go all the way back to the fucking 14th Amendment. Maybe complain about the 19th while we're at it.
That's what's going to have to collapse.
He just means like the legal structure that outlaws certain kinds of discrimination in certain circumstances. He's specifically here talking about employment. He thinks that all that needs to collapse.
The contractors in general, they might vote Democrat or they might vote Republican, but they're not easily taken in because they have a relationship with the unforgiving. An electrician who starts...
Wait, what? No, what? No, people compartmentalize all these different parts of their lives. If this was true, then fucking one of these people he's talking about would never just fall in love quickly with someone, right? Because that's irrational, right? It is irrational to meet someone and then immediately have these strong feelings of attachment to them. But that happens in people's lives all the time. So I don't know what he's talking about. We all do things impulsively.
Believe in crazy ideas is going to encounter 110 or 220 relatively quickly. It's a short ride.
And that's the beauty of talking to these people.
But so people with those kinds of, this is interesting. People with those kinds of jobs are often thrill seekers, outside of work. Maybe not an electrician, but I don't know, maybe an electrician, because they could die at work. Maybe they're more likely to go skydiving because they have to deal with, in their professional life, they have to deal with this thing that could kill them. And so for fun, they go skydiving.
Exposing yourself to reality encourages a simplicity of thought.
You keep saying reality.
Yeah. Okay, physics. For
Well, I
example.
call it a relationship with the unforgiving.
Yeah.
You try to fudge something that isn't.
Oh, yeah. General contractors never fudge anything.
Like you see this very often if you take somebody who doesn't go hiking into the mountains. At some point, they'll just sit down and say, I'm tired. And you say, okay, I want to go home. Well, it's 8.7 miles down that way. We've got 45 minutes of daylight. So how does that work?
Well, if you are experienced in going out into the woods and you take somebody who's inexperienced in going out into the woods and you walk them almost 9 miles away from where they want to return to with 45 minutes of daylight left, you might have just killed that person. How cold is it going to get tonight? Did you tell them to bring any water? Like, what the fuck? What a horrible guide.
Has no idea that they have to actually negotiate the unforgiven. So, do something.
Right, but you're in this story, you're the one who took them there, right? This doesn't make any sense.
Play an instrument, climb a rock wall, do electrical work. You'll very quickly figure out whether you have a positive relationship with the unforgiven.
So playing an instrument is interesting because that's not really true. There are fucking rock stars who themselves admitted, Kurt Cobain comes to mind immediately, not the world's greatest guitarist.
We research the life from some to strip and this. We
will be
with
a week X the us. Good point. Joe, you
demonstrated that they're not insane.
Yeah, you know that scene in the Terminator series, come with me if you want to live. He's what's available. Love him or hate him. Now, then the next thing you get is that once people say, I am pro-Trump, they start to excuse all of his excesses and the MAGA movement's excesses. And so people need this kind of cognitive consonance. And so they get...
Yeah, this is called hero worship. Eric, there's a version of fucking hero worship around you on the internet. And when people in his Discord started to question him about his theory of everything, he just fucking left his Discord and essentially shut it down.
And then they become cognitively consonant with the idea that everything is great on the MAGA side. And, this is very hard to avoid.
Yeah, especially if you're a public figure, because people will then try to tag you with that. Like,
well, if you're a public figure and you say, I support X and such a politician, people don't have to try to tag you with that. You tagged yourself with that.
And this comes back to the criticism that we were discussing, because ultimately, I think what it comes down to is you are an independent thinker, and that's why we like you. But every 4 years, there's an election, and you have to condense all that complexity into a binary choice.
2 binary choices. Well, actually, 1 quaternary choice and 1 up to quaternary choice.
What?
There's who you vote for and what you recommend. So I went to the polling place. I may have voted one way or the other. I may have...
You know what? I'll tell you who I voted for. I voted for Kamala Harris. I don't know why this guy is like such... Why won't you say who you voted for? There's people in this chat who say I didn't like Kamala Harris and I didn't vote. Like, why won't you tell? Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's just fucking nothing's going to happen to you. I bet he voted for Kamala Harris, dude.
I may have not voted in that particular race. But the question is, can I recommend something to my first cousin once removed?
No.
And if I looked at the amount of hatred that came my way, there was no way you could ask me to tell some sweet 75-year-old gal, hey, get into this car with these people. Stupid Jew.
Wait, what?
God. And this
I don't think anybody ever hurls that. In fact, I think he's like friendly with some anti-Semitic people.
To my frustration with both the Democratic and the Republican movements. Are there no men? And I hate to say it this way, but it's
yeah, there's men. Yes. There's men.
Are there no men who stand up and say, You cannot talk that way. I just watch these pile-ons and this these incited.
Well, nobody really has the power to tell somebody else. You can tell somebody else to shut the fuck up, but as soon as you start taking action to make them shut the fuck up, if you're just a regular person, or even if you're, 2/3 of the way up the layer cake, you just get arrested.
Online mobs and this vitriol and hatred. It's like, somebody stand up as an individual. We can't do that in the magazine.
Does this guy not understand how a mob works? A mob works in such a way that you standing up as an individual aren't going to have much power over the mob.
We're not going to be going after individuals like that.
Well, no. The problem with what the right did is during the left's control over the entire system, the right made free speech a sacred value, and they
Thank God,
of course. But what they also did is they confused the freedom for people to speak with the necessity of accepting all speech as being equal, essentially, right? So
damn, even Constantine is getting annoyed with Eric. That's amazing.
I can't say to somebody, stop attacking somebody online because it's just rude and there's no need to do it. Because that well, are you trying to shut down my speech? That's what people say.
100% I'm trying to shut down your speech.
Right, because these people believe in the free speech, the one-way street version of free speech a lot of the time. It's where they talk and you listen.
I can't believe this isn't taught in civics. The easiest part of public parks is building public parks. The hardest part is keeping the syringes and the gang members and the sex in the bushes away from the.
But that's a public park. That's not. Also, I don't know, if nobody can see you, why shouldn't you be able to do drugs and have sex in the bushes at a public park?
Toddlers. The easiest part of free speech, and I very much appreciate Elon for doing this, is opening the pipe and keeping it open. The hardest part is the culture, so that it never occurs to anyone to act like this except for a tiny fringe few.
This is a tiny fringe group of people that engages in these what would appear to be massive online pile-ons, right? This isn't everybody. If there's a huge pile-on on somebody happening on the character of the day on Twitter or whatever, you walk down the street, nobody fucking knows what the shit's going. Nobody knows what you're talking about if you try to talk to some random person about it. So it's a very tiny group of people who engage like vigorously in politics on the internet in the first place. And so what the fuck is he talking about?
The culture of free speech is absolutely about the social restraint of dangerous, bad speech. This idea that the cure for bad ideas is good ideas is nonsense.
Well, but I agree, but probably for a different reason. I don't think you can cure people being dumb and acting crazy. I think it's just the human condition. I think to the best of our ability, we should maybe, if we can, try to structure our society so that those people, the damage they can do to the average person is limited. But when I say the average person, I don't mean somebody that bought the ticket, right? Eric and people like him, he's basically talking about himself and how people make fun of him right here. He bought the ticket. He decided he wanted to be a public intellectual. So when you buy that ticket, you're going to take the ride, but you don't get to choose where the ride's going. That's a little bit different than, and I hate to use this, but then throwing somebody onto the train and making them go where the train takes them.
Ideas compete on fitness. We have a fitness landscape where a really bad idea can easily outcompete good ideas, better ideas.
But what if we don't agree what the good ideas, the bad ideas, and the better ideas are? What if I don't agree? Then how do we fucking work that? I guess a dictator, like a marketplace of ideas, is actually just a cathedral and not a bazaar. Like what the people are going to have different ideas about what a good idea is.
The only thing that works is if people of good character use something that precedes cancellation. Cancellation is a terrible concept. I don't know where it came from.
People have always publicly criticized other people.
shunning, social shunning of bad speech in a free speech environment is not the same thing as saying you cannot say that. There's an important concept.
Yeah, but you get mad when people do, well, to be fair, he gets mad when people make fun of him.
And I don't know why this isn't taught. I don't know where it went. It's must.
That's because you can't, like, why would you teach that in a civics class? That, like, oh, we have free speech and we value free speech and we want everybody to have their say, even if they're wrong, but also we don't really want everybody to have their say.
Mustn't isn't shouldn't, and mustn't isn't can't. You must not say or do certain things in a free speech environment, because if free speech doesn't pay a dividend, gentlemen, it's going to go away. The whole key to free speech is the culture of self-restraint, decency, and prosperity.
Yeah, but like, that's just like your mom telling you when you're 9 that, hey, like, I guess it's okay that you think that, but maybe when we're at dinner, don't say that. Like, yeah, we all try to do this. Like, even people who you think are like the most outrageous or the most unhinged or whatever, they probably go through some process of deciding whether or not they're going to put this particular idea they have out into the world. I know I do it.
So that people feel that they've got a lot to lose.
Yes, the problem with that is the internet is anonymous, and for very good reasons, and we would want to protect some anonymity, I think. But an anonymous environment, because of the way human beings are, we've all been in a car behind a windscreen. But human beings don't seem to be capable of behaving in that way without the threat of repercussions, right? And if you're anonymous, there is no threat of repercussions because you're anonymous.
So you've made us some assumptions that
I have.
We should have this very high level of anonymous speech, and that the real problem is coming from anonymous accounts.
Well, so
yeah, this is Eric. Eric like accuses a hell of people. Like, I bet if I was bigger, and if I was doing this, but not giving you my full name at the beginning of each show, he would say that I was anonymous, that I was not. Like, he would say that because that's what he means. He means like fucking accounts with just names like Demonica Blewinski or whatever. That's like a real person. And a pretty funny drag name too, actually. A little retro.
Jordan's talked about this. Jordan Peterson's made this point that the anonymous trolls on the internet behave in the way that they behave because they're anonymous. So his shortcut was, well, we got to end anonymity. And a lot of people, I think, rightly said, there are some problems with this because anonymity is actually highly valuable. It's valuable for journalists in Iran. It's valuable for this. It's valuable for that, right? It's valuable for people to be able to retain that anonymity in certain situations. You're frowning at me. I'm just laying out the argument, right?
No, I want to make sure we don't build in assumptions. I don't think that we know.
But like, we have to build in assumptions to have any conversation.
Peterson is wrong. I don't think we know.
Well, wrong and right, these are very simplistic concepts. The point I'm making is there are trade-offs to everything. Yeah. You could ban anonymity on the internet, and that would have lots of positive benefits. It would also have lots of terrible consequences.
Sure.
Right? You could also not ban anonymity on the internet, and then you'd get what we have now.
So those are the two Schelling points.
Yeah.
And then you have all the interesting stuff in between them. And as a guy who's never open borders or closed borders, or never pro-life or pro-choice, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, but we have something between that, because I can choose to be more or less anonymous in my speech. Like, I have sock accounts on different social media platforms. Most of them are just there to observe, and in spaces where I've been kicked out, or where if I used my real name or sort of anything associated with the work here, anybody who wanted to take a look through the list of people that are following them or in their community would figure out like who I am real quick.
How the Schelling points completely derange us, but you can have anonymous accounts in which you have to become known to the platform in order to open one,
which will get hacked, and then the government of Iran is going to find out where you live.
So I'm going to continue with this. Mm-hmm. There are all sorts of technological measures and countermeasures, and it's not clear to me that if you choose to use anonymity, that you shouldn't bear some risk, because the risk that you're putting other people at.
But you do bear some risk.
It's about constraints. It's about trade-offs, and it's about objectives.
This guy must have really hated the early internet, because if anybody remembers, like at the beginning, like everybody just had screen names, just had usernames. That was it. You could tell somebody was hella old, or basically tell, like in the early internet, you could tell somebody was like hella old because they used their real name. And there were other people. There were people who early on in journalism and whatnot who attached their real name to what they were doing, but they were blogging and like doing like journalist work on the internet. But like, you could just tell that somebody was like a fucking boomer and shit, like early on, if they would just like use their full name.
What we have now, I'm concerned, is not going to deliver us free speech in the long run.
No, I agree.
The ability to ruin lives using these tools is too easy. The friction for ruining a life. You know, even sometimes what you have is you have a situation whereby it's very hard to catch anybody, but if you do catch them, the penalties are so dire that the expected return of that strategy is turned negative. I think that what I'm very concerned by is that we have a group of people who are used to being controlled, who've decided that they want no controls whatsoever. And clearly the right thing to do is to get the controls as far away from law and restriction as possible, and as much towards mustn't. And
How do we do that?
So it's all vibes based.
I would say the question is, how did we do that? And in large measure, you know, I don't mean to give you a big ego, but you did say something at the ARC conference that I wish I could remember exactly. You said, I'm not a conservative, but I will tell my conservative friends that if they want their culture conserved, they're going to have to deal young people in. People need a stake. People need to feel that they have a lot to lose. And you're not going to be able to preserve the West, and whatever that means, if people don't feel that this is a glorious place and we are so lucky to have it. The whole thing is about
some people don't believe that.
Decency. You know, I can't tell you how dispiriting it is when you see these discussions about, you know, nice guys never get the girl. You're like, well, maybe not nice guys, but what about good guys? Or good guys despite themselves? You know, I've always said that the secret is not the pickup artistry, but is the Han Solo character. He was a good guy despite himself. And, you know, the vibe is always...
But that's Harrison Ford.
The world again. I really was hoping to make some money this week. Okay. You know, extreme altruism and decency has to pay a dividend. And I just don't know how to get all of this fake masculinity out of the equation. You know, if you're worried about whether or not you're a man, try standing up for a friend.
But what did your friend do? Should you stand up for your friend, or should you put your friend in check?
A mob. Try standing alone. You know, that's like, it's terrifying. I find it really unpleasant in many ways, but at least I'm not worried about being a coward. The word coward is the one word I think that I really just doesn't land.
Ooh, everybody's calling me a coward on Twitter.
Unpleasant stuff. The thing that really makes me sad is I don't feel like I've inspired people.
Yeah, because you suck.
I've inspired people to stand up for their friends. You know, I have a policy that says, if you're a friend of mine, there's nothing you can come after my friend with that will cause me to repudiate him.
That's stupid. If you find out that one of Eric's friends is actually plotting to kill him, right? And you demonstrate to Eric that this is true, Eric's probably going to repudiate this supposed friend of his who was planning to yeet him. I know, I mean, this is just self-preservation. You're not, oh, this person's plotting to do what? Well, I'm not going to hang out. I'm not going to associate with that person anymore.
And the thinking behind it is that I don't want to set up an incentive structure. Do you condemn or condone? You see all these, I neither condemn or condone my friend. I don't know what he did. It was 8.5 years ago. I didn't know him yet. You know, like that kind of weakness.
What happened 8.5 years ago?
Private.
Like, what do you mean? What happened 8.5 years ago? Did they kill their entire family?
And, you know, I might
they say something dumb at a party. Like, what are you talking about?
Of you in public. And then I might, you know, take you out behind the woodshed and say, what the F? Men need friends.
Eric's woodshed is made of gold.
To know how to stick together, and men need space to be male. Deciding that every group of men is a threat to women is a disaster. If men are going to stand up for women, they need space to work out their stuff. So, my feeling about this is we need a culture that creates mustn't.
Yes, but I asked you how you do that on the internet, and we're not closer.
Well,
because it's the internet you're talking about. That's where this happens, right?
So my claim is that most of the time I don't see in the street, like you see these videos where people are doing horrible things. Like there's some old woman and some guy will just like clock her. What do they call it?
You can't do that over the internet.
Happy slapping or something.
Happy slapping or something like that. And we're just aghast because we can't believe that kind of internet level behavior exists.
But people assaulted and battered people on the street prior to the internet. This isn't a thing that happened because of the internet. And there's some evidence that the overall reduction in the violent crime since the early to mid 90s, some of that might be the internet.
In the real world, we need at some level to recognize we are partially solving this already in the real world. For all the talk about how terrible the streets in Los Angeles are, you can sit out at a cafe and not have any expectation something horrible is going to happen to you. We need to figure out how to return costs to bad actors.
But that's what the people who are doing the pile-on think they're doing, Eric. When somebody says or does something really stupid, whether they do it online or they do it like in meat space, and then people online group up, maybe they don't, maybe planned, maybe not, and just start piling on them. Those people think that they're dealing out some version of a consequence for that other person's behavior. This is like Kara Swisher says this all the time. She's like, sometimes this is cancel culture and it's, uncalled for and people shouldn't do it. But sometimes somebody's chickens are just coming home to roost, right? Sometimes this is just the consequences of your behavior and people finding out what you're doing.
That's why I'm asking. Sorry, Francis. Just to finish.
No,
that's why I'm asking about the online environment.
So I keep saying things, and you guys keep saying, "Well, we have to protect this person in Iran."
Hold on. No. I'm just asking you.
No, actually, he only said that once. I can't believe I'm defending Constantine.
Solved online, because your argument of the real world is very different. In the real world, in the physical realm, there are very clear material potential consequences to bad behavior.
So you post a bond, and the idea is that if you're found to be misbehaving, it's under the sole discretion of the platform whether to confiscate money that you put up, or you have.
Wait, what? Excuse you? So I have to give Twitter fucking 15 grand, right, to use Twitter, and then fucking apartheid Clyde gets to decide whether or not to take that 15 grand?
Have some sort of a series of cryptographic signatures where in general you need multiple agents in order to figure out whose account it is, but you actually have to have an ID. I could probably generate 13 different ideas, but if you decide that anonymity is sacred and I should be able to create 10,000 accounts.
But people have always been able to, like, if you wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper talking shit about somebody, right? And maybe what you were saying was true and it seemed like it was interesting to the readers, the newspaper could publish that and without your name attached to it because you didn't give it to them. If they had a forensics team and you fucking put fingerprints on, maybe, but like, this has always been the case. There've always been anonymous sources in journalism. The fucking police, if you are guilty of a crime or you're accused of a crime or whatever, sometimes they may use anonymous sources or they may gather information from people that they don't include in their report so that they can gather other information that they can include in their report. I'm not saying the cops are good at the system's just, but this is like sort of, you always do this. When I was reporting on this Aaron Smith Levin thing, I talked to so many people on background whose names I don't use, but they gave me valuable information that allowed me to find other information that I could use. Like, what is he talking about?
No, you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But I think this is the conundrum, and the ideas you listed don't seem to me like they're particularly workable.
Well, you didn't like my idea of solving the Middle East problem last time either. I thought it was a lot better than you thought it was.
Well, I'm sure it was a lot better than I thought it was, but my
You were
point...
being nice to Sam. I appreciate that.
my point is that I think the dilemma for social media companies is massive. And the problem you've identified is totally true. There is a culture, particularly on Twitter, where everyone performatively acts like a dick. And
It's called
you
trolling.
can't say, why are you being a dick? Because then you're being a pussy. That's kind of how it works.
Wait, what?
That's the dynamics of the conversation.
So then,
What are we, 12?
you have this current situation where you drive out every regular human being, and only the monsters.
Regular human beings don't really use Twitter. Like, it's just us fucking freaks that use Twitter.
Have their ball. I'm sorry. I've dealt with this before. I've watched Jordan. In my opinion, Jordan wanted to get rid of anonymity. I don't necessarily want to get rid of anonymity. I want to come up with a schedule to return costs. The key point is, get 100 super smart people who understand economics.
But who decides who the 100 super smart people are who make the decision? Then what if you get those 100 people together and they fucking come up with something you don't like? And Eric's like, see, that was what happens when you don't let me choose each individual of the 100 super smart people.
And technology, cryptography.
He's also describing like some kind of oligarchy in what they call the marketplace of ideas, which is crazy.
Bad actors without banning bad speech. How do we create mustn't? It's a puzzle. Have an X prize. Come up with scenarios where you have speech simulations and you try to figure out, in general, we have type 1 error where we create a decision boundary as to what must and mustn't correspond to. Must you allow this? Mustn't you allow this?
This is just a lot of words for I need people to stop making fun of me on the internet.
And let's get busy. Let's have fun.
Let's not get busy. That's
the conversation
disgusting.
is trapped in the old terms of service, free speech versus censorship thing. Anytime you see that kind of polarization, try to push it off to the side, because in general, what it's saying is that Schelling points are going to determine, when does life begin? Let me guess. Viability, moment of conception, birth. Nobody says, I don't know, let's look at the embryology and figure out where neural tube formation is, something like that.
I think somebody probably has, and we're at about the right time to end the podcast portion of the show. This was pretty interesting because to the extent that he's capable, Constantine kept asking this guy to answer the fucking question and give some kind of like concrete answer about this. And the question here is, should people be able to have like accounts that are under a handle, a username instead of their name? And I think that the vast majority of people on the internet and people in society would just say, yeah. And some platforms have rules against doxing those people and releasing their personal information. Now it gets a little tricky when somebody essentially becomes a public figure, but we have already kind of grappled with this. Facebook, if people remember, they tried to do a real name policy and then they sort of backed off of it because it didn't work. And people weren't on there using like names to be anonymous even necessarily. Like they made my friend who goes by G. Williker as an artist change his name to his government name on there. Like, what did that do for everybody? Everybody knew who the fuck that was. Everybody in the San Jose music scene knew who the fuck that was. So like, what the fuck? Like, it didn't do anything. This guy wants people to stop making fun of him.
The focus on ridicule.
He's been very angry at people making fun of him online for a very long time because he thinks he is incredibly smart. Yet, while he's angry at people for making fun of him, he takes shots at people all the time. And it's just that he's not funny. So if he takes a shot at somebody, it's like somebody pulling out a pocket watch and calling somebody a scallywag or something, whereas the scallywag's got jokes. And so he doesn't like that. He didn't like he would say the asymmetry of the encounter there. Because, man, if you want to get after somebody, if you want to take somebody down, if you want to make other people like laugh at somebody, if you want to make other people ridicule somebody, it helps if you're funny when you're going after them. And Eric ain't got none of that. He does not have that swagger. He is very unfunny, very self-important, very like pseudo serious, because some of the shit he says is really wacky. So I'm not sure that he's even a very serious person. He just thinks of himself as a very deeply serious, very deeply thoughtful, very deeply intellectual person. And when somebody else claps back at his dumbass with a joke, he's through. He's cooked. He can't do that. He can't play that game. And so instead of being like, oh, well, that's a game I can't play, he goes, well, we need to get rid of the game, right? He doesn't want to play the game now. He wants to play the ref. He wants to get the ref to get rid of the funny person, because the funny person is unserious. It's always the same with this guy, isn't it? Every time we end up talking about him, it always comes back to this. It's like personal aggrievement that he wants very badly to be taken seriously, and he wants nobody to insult him, all the while he insults people constantly. Now, I don't care if he insults people constantly. I insult people all the time, but I don't expect them not to insult me. I mean, I personally hope that if I go after Eric, I hope he goes after me. Best thing that ever fucking happened to me, because I'm good at that shit. Eric isn't. He just is rich. And that's all he is, really. He's rich and like full of himself. He's accomplished financial success, and I guess he was fairly good at venture capital. All that I don't know, because he worked at Teal Capital, which is Peter's boutique firm, not Founders Fund, the one that made all the fucking money. So I don't actually know if he was good at that either. I just assume he was, but it's not like Peter Thiel cares so much, especially at his boutique firm, if somebody's competent. What he cares about is if they tell Peter Thiel that Peter Thiel's a genius. And so I'm just not sure. And I think that maybe, and I'm just speculating here, I think that, like a lot of people actually, and when you get down to it, Eric's probably a deeply insecure person, worried about his personal flaws, worried about his character flaws, his flaws socializing with people, and his off-putting and idiosyncrasies. And I think that that's just a normal thing to have as part of your consciousness. I think we all are maybe worried about that stuff sometimes, but it's fine to be worried about those things and maybe correct for those things in certain social situations. What the problem with him is that he thinks that those those things that other people think are like weird idiosyncrasies or character flaws, he thinks that those are what makes him special, a special boy and a genius, and that everybody should acknowledge, understand, and possibly worship that about him. And I don't think any of us are entitled to that, and I think it's delusional to expect that. There's things about me that are idiosyncratic. I don't like the word weird, I suppose, but like weird to other people, maybe off-putting. And that's why I don't have a big audience, probably. And that's fine with me. I'm okay with that. Because if I notice things about other people that are off-putting, it's only rational to assume that other people notice off-putting things about me. It seems like him and his brother and Sam Harris actually are really bad at that. Really bad at accepting that if other people annoy them or piss them off, or if they think other people have poor character because of the way they behave, that maybe the person they think that about, maybe that person actually thinks that about Sam or Eric or Brett too. Maybe it's mutual, and maybe everybody's wrong and everybody's right, and it's just a mess. And that's fine. That's called dealing with and interacting with other people. The thing I guess he doesn't like is on the internet, everybody's invited to the party, right? So he can't just have a party with like Sam Harris and Brett Weinstein and Constantine and Non Oliver and Barry Weiss or whatever if he's on Twitter, because there's people he hasn't blocked yet on Twitter. And if one of them has a pretty good dunk on Eric, well, there's nothing he can do about it, right? He can't uninvite them to the party because he doesn't run the party. Even if he gets them kicked off of Twitter, they could go to Facebook and start making fun of Eric. And that's sort of what's going on here. He just doesn't like being made fun of. And in the social circles that he might run in the real world, he can prevent people from doing that because he's rich and he's best friends with the guy whose mansion the party's at. But online, even if you're best friends with the guy whose mansion the party's at, Elon Musk, people are still going to clap back at you and make fun of you. There's nothing you can do about it because everybody can see what you're putting on there. That's why maybe if you don't want people to make fun of you, you should shut the fuck up. And that's been the intellectual Dollar Tree. Everybody, live viewers, as always, stick around. We're going to go into red light. Podcast listeners, we're going to go ahead and give this one out for free, the whole show. So you can just go to patreon.com/echoplex or eplex.store, and you can grab this one for free. The title will be like IDT Live 12/25 2024. And yeah, I don't know what to say except fuck Eric Weinstein. He's a little fucking crybaby. We're going to run Boomers by Periscope. I'm going to change the contents of my beverage and the color of the lights in this room. We're going to come back with some other horrifying content.
Should you pay